beautiful place.
Excellent. Thank you. Welcome to the 2022 Municipal Candidates Debate for the Town of Innisfil. My name is Deborah McGrath, and I'm really honored to be your moderator today. It's now my pleasure to introduce our candidates seated left to right alphabetically, fair and equitable. Mayoral candidate Dan Davidson. Mayoral candidate Lynn Dolan. Deputy mayoral candidate Kenneth Fowler. Deputy mayoral candidate Rob Nickel. Because this isn't our first rodeo, it isn't their first rodeo either, they have given me permission to call them by their first names. We're going to start with our first question. Again, these questions were not preset. In other words, the candidates have no knowledge of what I'm going to ask them. We wanted a true and fair debate environment. Question number 1, climate change. According to world records, Canada is currently experiencing warming twice as fast as the global average. Further, climate change is the greatest long-term global challenge that human society faces. In February of 2022, the town of Innisfil declared a climate emergency. Question: beyond the declaration, what policies or strategies would you want the town to implement to address climate change? We're going to start with Dan, and then Lynn, then Kenneth, and then Rob.
Thank you. My action plan for Innisfil is a green and sustainable Innisfil climate change action plan, which we have as council put forward. Mine is to protect Lake Simcoe, first of all. That's what got me into politics. Our parks and our rural areas. Also, a use of green technology to reduce our carbon footprint. And if people don't think that climate change isn't happening, just look what happened on our East Coast, and look what's happening currently in Florida, where they deny that climate change is happening. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn.
Thank you. First of all, thank you so much to the Innisfil District Association, Rotary, and the Innisfil ideaLAB and Library for hosting this, and thank all of you for giving up some of your Saturday to be here. So as Deborah mentioned, we did pass a climate emergency, and we've hired a sustainability catalyst. She is working through a 3 pillars of our action plan, our integrated sustainability action plan: mitigation with reducing energy use and carbon footprint, things like EV chargers and renewable energy. Adaptation, that's adjusting our behavior as well as our infrastructure resiliency. So making sure that when something is damaged, we rebuild it to withstand more. And sustainability, which is reducing our waste, things like a single-use plastic ban, and using the circular economy, the old reduce, reuse. So all of those items together, we're right now engaging the public, the youth, and you can go on our website, and there's a place where you can comment on the plan and what you think about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Kenneth.
There we go. When it comes to climate change, we can't think immediately to the 3 or 4 years in the future. We have to think 30 to 40. So if you take a look at the other townships and the way they've done this in the past, you've seen that they haven't thought long-term. Reduced carbon footprint through intensification, preservation of farmland and green space. I used Mississauga as an example. They had to implement a tax for the water because there wasn't enough green space left over to absorb the rainfall that occurs. When we come forward in the future, we have to be open to the new ideas and the new technology that comes along. We have the EV stations. We're working on expanding those. We're changing our fleet over to a more environmentally friendly units with the electronic vehicles. But the big thing that we have to work on is preservation of our green spaces. Make sure, because no matter how much money, you can put $100,000 into 100 acres, but once it's gone, it's gone. Nature is the best way to manage this, so we need to preserve and maintain it as much as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. And Rob.
Thanks. Well, I'm glad I guessed correctly on the questions today. So I did have on environment and climate change solutions. So the reason most of us moved to Innisfil was the lake and the recreational community, the lifestyle. Happily, to help protect these, I was appointed to the director of the Nottawasaga Valley Conservation Authority for the past 8 years. It was my motion on Bill 229, which passed unanimously, supporting conservation authorities and their role in watershed management. I collaborated with councillors around Lake Simcoe to unlock the phosphorus reduction facility from the Upper York Simcoe sewage solution and to secure government funding for it to help reach those phosphorus targets to help save our lake. I have argued against many applications negatively impacting our environment, including cash in lieu of parkland. I presented very detailed and relevant questions about true impacts of possible resort-style marinas, and unlike some others here, I voted down a proposed golf course expansion onto EP land. Personally, I also called on the federal government to honor their pledges of tens of millions of dollars to help protect Lake Simcoe. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates. Question number 2. Again, the candidates have not heard these questions. They did a lot of guessing, I hear. This one should not come as a shock to anyone. Protecting Lake Simcoe. Lake Simcoe's health is threatened by the extent and impacts of development in place and planned development for the watershed basin. The nutrient phosphorus contributes to algae and weed growth. We know this. And when these die, the process consumes oxygen in the water. This impacts our prized cold water fish, lake trout, and whitefish, and in turn, our $420 million a year sustainable recreation sector. Cutting our phosphorus loads in half from 97 tons to the targeted 55 in the Lake Simcoe Protection Act and Plan is essential for maintaining lake health. There has been no new coordination between municipalities, regional governments, and the province on water and wastewater servicing capacity around Lake Simcoe since 2011. Question: what steps will you implement to ensure Innisfil reduces the phosphorus load in Lake Simcoe by 2026, a mere 4 years from now? Lynn to start, please, then Kenneth, Rob, and Dan.
Thank you so much for the question, Deborah. There's nothing that is more important to residents of Innisfil than our beautiful Lake Simcoe, and we must do everything to repair it and then keep it in that state. So the Lake Simcoe Protection Plan is something that the town of Innisfil is very committed to. We do our septic inspection program around the lake every 5 years to make sure that there's no septic systems that aren't operating properly. As Rob mentioned earlier, we advocated with Bradford and other municipalities around the lake for the waste treatment center that will come off of the canal in Bradford. It's so important. When you look at the old CanWet models of the modeling of where the phosphorus is coming from, so much of it is coming from the West Holland River, and we really need to do something to protect that. I also think that the province should be, or the federal government should be, putting more money back into the Clean Up Lake Simcoe Fund, which we had several years and several projects that we dealt with. But I also want to say that as chair of the South Georgian Bay Lake Simcoe Source Protection Committee, we're doing everything we can to protect the sources of drinking water. And also another new threat that's coming, sodium chloride is on, and that also, we have to watch the salt intake to the lake because that can be just as dangerous. Thank you.
Thank you. Kenneth.
Thank you, Deb. Again, I hate to sound like a broken record, but a lot of it comes with growth. And we have been designated a growth hub for the county of Simcoe, which means that we know that there's going to be more housing, that means that there's going to be more people, there's going to be more transportation. So in this regard, intensification once again comes into play. If you have buildings that go up versus sprawl, you maintain the green space, the natural filtration into the lake, which removes the phosphorus in many ways. When you have subdivisions, everybody wants a nice green lawn. Everyone wants to make sure it's nice and shiny and looks perfect. But when you live in an apartment, for example, that option is removed, and it keeps the natural spaces that we have. Nature has put something in place many times that handle the lake into the phosphorus. The more we alter the dynamic of the town to do so, the more we alter the phosphorus in the lake itself. So by better management within the growth node that we have in Innisfil, we can actually assist nature as to opposing it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken.
I guess I could have held some of my comments a little earlier down, I guess. Obviously, with phosphorus, it was myself and councillors around the lake who got together, who were able to get York Region to separate the phosphorus reduction facility from their overall sewage solution. The environmental assessments are begun on that facility already. The federal government and the provincial government have previously committed millions of dollars to Lake Simcoe, but have not fulfilled all of their promises. So we need, as our community, we need to continue to push them to fulfill their commitments. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, has this elicited any more follow-up questions? If so, please come and see Brandy. My apologies, Dan.
Thought I'd get out of that one. Anyhow, anybody that's followed my career in politics, we have to give credit where credit was due. Credit is given to the ladies of the lake who brought the attention of Lake Simcoe to this town. Not the federal government, not the provincial government, and not the council of the day, ladies of the lake. As also an active member with environmental defense for the protection of Lake Simcoe to raise almost $60 million to get Lake Simcoe brought back up to speed. The federal government needs to walk the talk. They definitely know Trudeau's great for going around the world saying Canada's this great carbon clean country and we've got to get rid of oil and gas and whatever, yet he doesn't give us the money to clean up our own water. Sodium chloride, yes, I understand that that's very new to some areas, but I know the city of Barrie uses the same quantity of salt as the city of Oshawa on their roads. In Innisfil, we do a sand and salt mixture, and we also use juice as water browning that we do to help not impact Lake Simcoe. I think we also have to look at new technology with our water and wastewater treatment plants. I was on the committee when we expanded the wastewater treatment plant. We are one of the best on Lake Simcoe. Thank you.
Be asked to speak up.
Yes. Well, thank you. Dan, I just wanted to make sure you were paying attention, and you were. But you had some help over here. Question number 3. Household food insecurity. 1 in 8 Simcoe-Muskoka households are food insecure. 1 in 6 children and youth in Simcoe-Muskoka are food insecure. Only 1 in 5 food insecure households will visit a food bank, like this one you see right here, the food fridge. Innisfil, of course, has a local food bank, thanks to the Courtneys for establishing it many years ago, and 3 dedicated community fridges. And just in case you forgot your Troy Scott community fridge donation, you're welcome to come back and leave it there or at any other of the fridges or food bank in the community. And that is an excellent starting point. Yet there are other ways to address household food insecurity. Here's my question. What steps will you take to further reduce or eradicate food insecurity in Innisfil? We're going to start with Kenneth, please.
Well, thank you, Deb, for the question. I've seen firsthand how our residents step up for each other in times of need. In these past 2 years with COVID, it was incredible the amount of generosity I've seen from our fellow residents. We've moved forward with the Troy Scott Community Fridge initially. This is the only fridge now that is currently inside a building. We are creating an environment where people can come with judgment-free, right? They can come, take, donate. No one watches, no one cares. It removes the aspect of pride. But one of the things we also need to do is build our local economy so that local jobs are more available to residents. 80% of us, 82% of us right now commute. So that means that our youth who can't afford a vehicle can't get out to Barrie, can't get to Bradford, can't get to Newmarket for work. So we need to create a situation by bringing in jobs locally that they can get to work, to sustain a household, to assist with a household, that multiple people who don't make a living wage can actually find a way to get there together through the growth of our local economy. That's the big thing we need. We need to give the people opportunities to provide. Once we help them help themselves, you'll see the good energy flow back into the environment. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Rob.
The past 2 years have really amplified the needs of our community. No one is necessarily looking for a handout, but just a hand up and maybe a shoulder to lean on. And we need to continue to find ways to help our neighbors and to help themselves. Many of us on council donated part of our pays for micro grants over the pandemic to help those in need, as well as we fully supported tax freeze and 1% increases during the pandemic to help our residents. We need to fully support our community church and the existing programs that are there for our residents to supply those that are in need. I don't know that Innisfil can, with the Troy Scott fridge, obviously Innisfil is trying to find other solutions for our residents as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Dan.
Thank you. Food insecurity is often caused by the fact they can't afford the house they live in, they can't afford the apartment rent they're paying. What we have to do is find attainable housing for our residents, for our first-time teenagers when they're moving out of the home, for seniors who are downsizing. By having attainable, affordable housing, they will have money to help buy food. We also have to increase our economic investment in Innisfil to create jobs that are good-paying jobs. And if we have to bring those industry to Innisfil, let's hope that they're green manufacturing facilities that will enhance Innisfil to keep its lakes clean. Well, I'm also a believer that if we can work regionally with the county of Simcoe and our neighbors to the north and south, we can do things as transportation, we can do things to save the people on their tax bill monthly by working together, not against, as a regional concept. And I will work hard to create a mix of units to accommodate young family and seniors, and those are the people that are using our food banks today. Thank you.
Thank you. Lynn.
Thank you for the question, and thank you for reminding me I have a lasagna that's unthawing in the back of my car right now that I meant to put in the fridge. I am tremendously proud of how the residents of Innisfil responded during the pandemic. Having the food program, the Troy Scott Community Fridge, added to our community to enhance what we already have, which is a wonderful food bank run by the Innisfil Community Church, has been astounding. We were also able, with our on-demand transit system, to allow anyone a free trip to the food bank or to the library, to the Troy Scott fridges, in order to access any of those programs. But I believe that is just the tip of the iceberg. There are other ways that we can make life more affordable, so there is more money for food. And part of that was also instituted by this last council when we passed, during the pandemic, a 0% increase in property taxes in 2021 and a 1% in 2022. We are able to keep keep hydro rates down, a more affordable housing so that people have to pay less rent, they can pay more for food. And I also think that there's other programs like Harvest Canada that can work and help, because so much food is thrown away every day. We need to stop that well, because that's also not good for the environment and greenhouse gases.
Thank you. All right. We are on our last question. Big sigh. All right. Question number 4, affordable housing. The County of Simcoe's draft land needs assessment is allocating a total population for Innisfil of about 85,000 people, or a net growth of 40,000 in the next 30 years. This does not include the orbit allocation. With rising inequity, increased housing costs, and a changing climate, it is imperative to design complete communities that are compact, more resilient, less expensive to service, and more affordable. Further, transitioning to more compact, resource-efficient communities could reduce a community's GHG, or greenhouse gas emissions, by 36 to 54%. Question: how will the town of Innisfil ensure affordable housing is firmly embedded in all future developments? Rob, to start, please.
The housing market in Innisfil has gone crazy, and we've gone from $400,000 average house prices to $800,000, further exposing the need for more affordable housing. Just this past Wednesday's council meeting, we approved allocation for more housing options right on Innisfil Beach Road. We have been proactively in legalizing second dwelling units as well as third dwelling units now, allowing our residents to find a variety of places to call home. With me as your county council member, we will need to work on the county for initiatives for more affordable and social housing projects, as well as look to municipal tax breaks to encourage more developers to work with us to provide more choices. With this in mind, I've always fully supported the orbit to deter urban sprawl while absorbing some of those provincial and county growth targets. Really, who can speak against intensification, not impacting the rest of Innisfil, but building transit-oriented community where you can take the elevator down to rapid transportation, moving every 15 minutes is a benefit to all of our community, and you can get to anywhere on lands that are already earmarked for regular housing. Thank you.
Thank you. Dan.
Thank you. Innisfil has to look at what we call walkable, workable communities. Communities that, not that what the developer wants to build. The developer wants to build single-family dwellings. They make more money, but what do? We lose our agricultural land. We have to look at mixed-use housing and commercial build-up, not out. That will provide homing, and it also provides more attainable units for people, again, first-time buyers, and also for seniors who are downsizing. I do notice our neighbors to the north sometimes are building huge blocks of all the same housing, but it's one style of housing for 500 people. That is not sustainable in the future. We have to think different, and we do have to go up so that we keep our agricultural land and our water clean. Thanks.
Thank you. Lynn.
Thank you, Deborah. Yeah, and I think it's more than just about attainable and affordable. We need wraparound services for supportive housing. We need to look at emergency shelters for the homeless, and we need to look at market housing. So it's really a whole suite of policies. Minister Clark always says it's not one and done to solve the housing crisis, and he's right. We need to do a number of different things in order to crack that nut. And what Innisfil is doing with the orbit is absorbing much of the growth in an area so that you don't use up as much land. So Bradford, New Tech, and Innisfil have all been allocated approximately the same population numbers to 2051. Bradford needs about 350 hectares. New Tecumseh needs about 350 hectares. We need about 100 because we're planning smart and we're doing it in a way where we can provide different product, more attainable product, and a product that we don't have to move away for. Right now, if you're in Innisfil and you outgrow cutting your grass in your backyard and don't want to do that anymore, you have to move out of Innisfil. There's no product here for you. So we want to make a diversity of product that will help all residents and make it more attainable. Thank you.
Thank you. Kenneth.
Thank you, Deb. When it comes down to it, when we look at the future of our town and the growth, I purposely use Mississauga as an example, the sprawl. Now, when you have that, you run short of space. If we can use the existing space we have in a more equitable fashion, build up, not out. It has three main factors that really work in favor for it. One, you create more units per square foot. It allows people that are downsizing to sell their home and move into something comfortable. There was a gentleman I spoke to in Stroud that said if he sold his house and moved across the street, it would cost him an additional $125,000. That's not acceptable. If you have units that they can downsize and invest their savings into to maintain a lifestyle without the maintenance of the property, that's good. But what we're also ignoring here, if we do the sprawl, is the services. If you have 2 kilometers of road with the same number of units as a 40-unit building, you take into account the amount of sewer, water, sidewalk, trees, maintenance, the roads. Everything has to be maintained. Then you take into account the phosphorus loads. You take into account the salt on the roads. By minimizing this, we reduce the cost to the taxpayers, put it onto the owner of the property while reducing the cost of people's homes that they can afford. New families without children or seniors that are looking to downsize. Let's give them the opportunity to stay here. Thank you.
Thank you. This first question is from Cheryl Hunt, and the question is for Dan. Dan, how would you suggest to apply current bylaws to swales and drainage on residential properties? Do you need me to repeat it?
Yes.
How would you suggest to apply current bylaws to swales and drainage on residential properties? With climate change in mind. Missed the bottom of that.
Well, first of all, in the town of Innisfil, and because of the Lake Simcoe Protection Plan, none of our rivers, all of our rivers, streams, creeks that flow into Lake Simcoe, and this would go for swales or moving water off private property, is not to enter Lake Simcoe if it's contaminated in any way. Those should be, our bylaws are in place to enforce. If they're not being in place, that means the system is broken. That system needs to be fixed. And that's one of the things I'm campaigning on, is let's fix the foundation and then we can take care of the rest. But right now, if that bylaw is not being done, it's time for change. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. We have a question for Lynn. There is no name here, Lynn. The question is, and I will repeat it if necessary, what was the final cost of the roster of the health center? And is it creating the return on investment that was planned? And I'm sorry, I can't read the bottom of this. Perhaps you can approach Lynn afterwards, whoever you are. Again, Lynn, did you need me to repeat it?
No, I heard it, Deborah. I can't tell you the answer to that. I can tell you that it is self-sustaining. I can't tell you what the final cost was, but I would be happy to get that information after I've got my phone with me or my computer with me, and I'm happy to supply that information to whoever wants it. But I can tell you that the entire building was built on the premise of it paying for itself and covering its own costs. So we've got a lot of tenants in there. We're welcoming 3 more Monday, and it's working really well for the community. It's wonderful to have Life Labs. It's wonderful to have Georgian Radiology and a pharmacy right here in our community, along with some more docs. The trouble is, Innisfil has always been treated as a space and not a place, and we've been underserviced for healthcare for so long, so we thought if we build it, they will come, and they did come. And now that building should be the way that all municipal infrastructure is built from now on, because it doesn't come from the tax dollar. That building will pay for itself through the tenants that are there, and also the our very generous community who donated so much, including Rizzardo's and Hordinski's and many others. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. I hope that adequately addressed your question. If it did not, please see Lynn after or contact her. I am going to break with convention here and ask this question of all four of you, because first of all, we have the time, and second of all, I think it's an important one. What will you do to protect agricultural farms in Innisfil? And I'm going to start with Rob and go this way, please.
So once again, the reason most of us moved to Innisfil was the community it is. It's rural, it's urban, it's recreational. I think if we continue the way we have with intensification as opposed to sprawl, we can continue to protect our agricultural lands and the essence that is Innisfil. I think it's just that simple. Thank you.
Thank you. Ken is next.
My opponent and I agree on this. Intensification is the key. But what it boils down to is a lot of the farms in my ward currently are being land banked by developers with the understanding and their desire to hold on to it with the expectation that when the borders change, that's fine. We'll just simply take over and put in a new subdivision. We can't do that. We can't allow it. We need to hold everyone to account, and when it comes to growth, do it with a 40, 50-year plan. Not just fill in, fill in, fill in. Barrie's done that up north. They filled up their space and took some of Innisfil's, and they filled in that space and took some more. That's not our plan. That's not what we want. We want to make sure that when we build smart, so that the farmlands remain farmlands for people who wish to farm on farmlands. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Lynn.
Thank you, Deborah. It became more apparent than ever during COVID how much local food means to all of us. And the farmers market became twice as busy all of a sudden, and people were really interested in eating local. And we need to protect that. By those numbers I told you earlier with the orbit allows us to absorb the growth that we're going to have to absorb because of the Places to Growth Act, but do it in a smaller area so that we can leave more traditional neighborhoods and we can leave more farmland and more green space in our community. How do we stop farms from growing houses? Don't let Barrie annex any more of our land. We have to make sure that we protect what we have, and also not just protecting the farmland, but making sure we still respect that we are a rural community. How many of you are cursing because the combine in front of you is going to slow down the road and you want to pass them? How many farmers have to try to navigate new roundabouts or new entranceways that were not built to standards to take agricultural equipment? So we not only have to talk the talk, we have to walk it. And I think that's really important that we remain, we're so proud to be an agricultural community, let's not lose that.
Thank you. And Dan.
Thank you. A lot of the points have already been brought up. First of all, we've got to stop the annexation for urban sprawl, exactly what Mayor Lynn Dolan spoke about. Stop Barrie from turning our farmland into residential housing. That's our first one. Also, I believe in going up. I think the orbit, I have my doubts and questions about it still, but it is a way to provide sustainable housing for the future of Innisfil. The province often forces things down our throat. We are a town, not a city, and we tend to have to fight a little harder to have our voices heard with the province. So again, that's my job as your mayor, is to lobby the province hard and say we do not want to be Mississauga, Brampton, or Barrie. Thank you.
Thank you. This question is for all, and again, because we are running ahead of schedule, and it is a very important one, I kind of relate to this one. Here's the question. Is there a plan to build accessible, affordable senior housing in Innisfil? No name, and I'm going to start with Lynn, please. Do you need me to repeat it, Lynn?
No, I think it's loud and clear, and it's on the minds of all of the candidates in this election. Accessible seniors housing is important, and it is also, again, there's been some big gaps in COVID that became very clear to us when we saw all the tragedy in long-term care homes. So aging in place is huge, and we want to make sure that people who want to do that are allowed to do that. So we do work with Simcoe County in our long-term care and aging in place homes. There's a huge, almost $300 million build going on in Beaton over the next few years, and we also are building near Sandy Cove Acres in the Matamede homes, and a lot of those will be bungalows and will be designed for older, I'm including myself in this, I'll be moving there as well, older folks, but also making it a community event as well, making sure that there are spaces, gathering spaces, placemaking where people can congregate and enjoy each other's company. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Ken?
When it comes to seniors, they're one of the fastest growing populations we have in Innisfil. We need to work with the growth of the community, and we have done that already in some small measures. I've sat down with Parkbridge, and I've talked to them when they put in the subdivision design for Innis Village. A portion of their homes that they're building are land lease, such as Sandy Cove, lowering the cost, allowing seniors to actually attain the housing, hence the term attainable. We're looking to make it available to them. If we can move forward with this, we can have the mix of the senior community amongst the new families and the existing families. The idea is to build smart, and as long as we can integrate cost-effective housing for seniors, we can provide them with a community that will support them as a whole versus isolating them in their own space and segregating them from the rest of the community. We want them to be included. They built Innisfil. Let's show them the same respect and love that they've given us. Thank you.
Rob?
As I said earlier, the housing market is absolutely crazy all over, not just in Innisfil. In Sandy Cove, units that used to be $100,000 in a seniors community are now $500,000 or more. We do have a retirement facility that's been approved that will be up on Big Bay Point, which will come online eventually. But we really need to work with the county to find a variety of housing options, including for seniors. That's the only way we can possibly attack that. Thank you.
Thank you. Dan?
Thank you. Currently, we're in the process, we have approved the Tollendale Village on Big Bay Point Road, which is a retirement village to be built. I just understand right now the delay is with working with our neighbors to the north to get the servicing. We want to do shared servicing with the city of Barrie. So it is underway. We just approved 100 a new high-rise on Innisfil Beach Road. It's 100 units, and they're one-bedroom units. So again, we are working on that attainability for seniors to be able to downsize. Also, the people at Sandy Cove are being nickel and dime to death over there. They're being gouged at every turn. The current developer, which is private, is not working for the seniors. And that's a concern I hear every day at Sandy Cove. So private ownership for seniors and affordable housing, it doesn't work. It's a nickel and dime death road. So we need to work better with the county. We are the powerhouse of the county, and yet all the retirement homes are being built to the north of us, to the west of us, but we don't have a retirement home built by the county for the residents of Innisfil, and that is something I will push for, that we get our fair share of our tax dollars from the county for the town of Innisfil. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you all. This question is for each of you. What plan do we have in place for public transportation? And I'm going to start, again, moderator's privilege here. I'm going to start with Rob, please.
Thank you. So Innisfil has always been innovative. We pioneered or piloted the Uber project to try and provide transit to Innisfil. With the size of this community, we cannot run static buses to be anywhere effective. It would only do Innisfil Beach Road and possibly to South Barrie. So that model, although not ideal, is providing us information on how to better serve our residents. Just last week's meeting, we passed another pilot, 2 more pilot projects with more transportation opportunities. We'll have some fixed routes that will run essentially from Innisfil Beach Park throughout the community and then up to South Barrie. So we're looking at other options. This size of this community, we cannot possibly put a fixed route that would start anywhere, say in Cookstown, and make it to Big Bay Point in any possible regular time frame, unless you want to spend hours on a bus. So again, the benefit of living in such an amazing community is also the detriment, because it's so far spread. We can't possibly afford to put a fixed route bus that would be any effectiveness. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Kenneth?
This has always been a tricky question due to the disbursement of communities in Innisfil. What I would suggest moving forward is one of the things we have with Uber that is giving us information is the metadata. Where the people have been picked up the most to where they've been dropped off the most. Who uses it the most? What hours do they use it the most? Use that information to our advantage. Work hand in hand with Uber with a system. For example, hypothetically, if the metadata said that the largest group came from the Innisfil Public Library, for example, to the GO station, what hours were they used? What hours were they called? How often were they done? Use that as a template for a bus to ease the burden off Uber. When COVID hit and they shut down Brampton, all the Uber drivers came up putting our Uber drivers out of work. When Brampton opened up, they went back down. There's a massive vacuum. There was cars being canceled, people being left. No one could get it. It's not perfect, but working in unison and evolving the system using the data they provide, we can actually create an environment where Uber can support our transit system. Use that one bus to get, for the majority of people, to get from point A to point B where they need it the most. And then when outside that time, then rely on Uber, which will then support our local drivers as opposed to those from outside Innisfil's borders.
Thank you, Ken. Lynn?
Thank you so much. It's a very common question because people move here from the GTA where they've had a fixed route transit system and they don't understand why we don't have one. Transit systems are highly, highly subsidized by the taxpayers. The City of Barrie has about 3 times the population that we do and a much smaller geographical footprint, and net over what they get in the fare box and the advertising on the buses still costs them between $8 and $10 million a year. We just cannot afford to do that here. When we put our on-demand transit system in, we had municipalities from all over Canada and the United States calling us, asking us, how we did it and could they do what we did. The fact that you can go from door to door call and within 5 minutes, have someone come right to your door. If you have a fixed transit system, you got to think about how you get from the 6th line to the 8th line to get on that bus, about standing in the cold waiting for half an hour before that bus comes. But as Kenneth said, we are using that data, and that's how we've developed our EV route. We've got Teslas coming and their higher occupancy vehicles, and we're using the data that we've got from Uber to assist us with these new structured routes that will be taking people to the GO train station in Barrie and hopefully very soon to the new GO train station in Innisfil.
Thank you. And Dan?
Thank you. Again, I'm going to talk about regional. The County of Simcoe provides buses to Wasaga Beach, Collingwood, Barrie, and various other areas. Where's our bus? We don't have one from the county. So again, our voice is not being heard. Also, I'd consider working with our neighbors to the north on a shared transit system for one end of the town, Sandy Cove, Innisfil Beach Road. I think if we approach them, maybe we could save some dollars on both sides, because I've seen the Maple Road bus empty so many times. So I think our users would use it. Also, if we work with the regional and our government, such as the county, our buses would be built to, or are built to do accessibility, or are there for accessibility issues. Uber started off great. It's not working great anymore. When you live on Big Bay Point, you call over, they have a new quote, oh, we'll charge you the Friday harbor rate, $35. So Uber is changing the rules as it goes along. I did speak to our current CAO about a new program that I picked up from another country, and Uber's new contract is only for 1 year because we are looking at alternative transportation. They're not going to hold us to the ground on that. So there are new ideas, new visions, and we'll keep working. I will keep working in that direction to make it happen, and accessibility will be at the top of my list now that I've been pointed out. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. This question is for Lynn, and then we have one for all, and that will be just about our time. Lynn, the question is from a resident. How can we ensure to guarantee sewage that was spilled in the lake in January of 2020 will not happen again? I'm not sure if this is a specific incident. Again, if the resident would like to clarify, or if you need more clarification.
Believe me, that day is etched in my mind.
Thank you.
It was January 11th, 2020. The ground was frozen. We had 40, I forget how many centimeters of rain that day, a huge rain event. And there was some development, sleeping line development that had been, the underground work had been done, but there was no plugs, and so the water that from the surface water went down into the new infrastructure, and we had a pumping station overwhelmed, and there were, I want to guess 20 houses that had sewage backup in them. So it was, council met here at the library with the residents that were impacted. We then had a special council meeting where we had the in-services president come and tell us why it happened, how it happened. He then explained what they had done to mitigate so that it couldn't happen again, and how they would put in different plugs and also a secondary containment. So if the first one didn't hold, there'd be a secondary one done. Council then approved a backflow prevention subsidy for each of the residents in those areas. Again, a horrible day that I don't want to have to live through again. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. We are coming almost to the end here, and again, I'm filtering these questions based on what we believe to be most important to the residents here in Innisfil. And that is based on not just media, but hundreds and hundreds of pieces of correspondence from municipal council meetings. And I think this one is, again, for all of our candidates, a very, very important one. Again, no name, all if possible, and we're going to do that. And I'm going to start with Dan, and here's the question. What will you do to attract a variety of jobs. The second part of this is about the orbit. I think I'm going to make a judgment here and think that most people would like to know how we get more jobs in Innisfil. So the second part of this question, I apologize, I'm going to leave out. Again, the question is, what will you do to attract a variety of jobs in the town of Innisfil?
Thank you. Currently, we're running the infrastructure up the 6th line to the Highway 400 corridor. Once we have that infrastructure in place, a lot of industry will locate, not shopping centers, not shopping malls on the 400 corridor, but industry. Currently, they're all running on wells and septic tanks, and it's just not affordable to build an industry there with that kind of system. So I will continue to push for the 6th line infrastructure program to keep going. And I think once we do that, industry will come to Innisfil. We are 20 minutes ahead of Barrie. We're at the, people don't realize the 400 and the 401 corridor is the busiest intersection in North America. We're only 40 minutes up the road from there. Mississauga's already built out, all Brampton's built out. Those industries want to move north for cheaper land and bring jobs to Innisfil. And with a shared transportation system by the county, we can get you to work and get you home. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Lynn.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I think it was great that when the county was doing the project to widen County Road 21 out to the 400, we took advantage and piggybacked on their contract in order to put the servicing in the ground so that we could service our employment lands, which I've been on council for 28 years and we've been trying to do that for 28 years, so I'm so glad to see that's finally getting done. Also, they plan the zoning that we've done for the Main Street, IBR. We've got a mixed-use zoning, so we've got commercial on the ground floor. We've got the second floor with office space and then residential above. And the third thing that we've done is we've partnered with Ryerson University, and we have our Innisfil DMZ. It's an incredible story. We've got many startup companies in there, tech startup companies, and we, you know, other DMZs are in Dubai and New York City and California and Innisfil. And we've got wonderful mentors in that group that help these young companies gather both funding, but also gather mentorship from other successful businesses, and it's working fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Ken.
With the servicing of the 400 corridor, one of the biggest decisions we have, again, is a smart choice, not an immediate choice. We can look into companies, we want to attract companies that are more green-oriented, and not companies that will have, for example, machines do all the work with 6 people in the entire factory. That doesn't create jobs. It creates tax revenue, but doesn't help the average resident. We need to address this by attracting a company that understands what our long-term goals are and what we're looking to achieve. Create local businesses, create local jobs, have secondary businesses. For example, if we put in Maytag comes in, they build washers, they build dryers. People can get to Innisfil Heights very simply, and those can carpool or potentially with the bus system if we get it in place. From there, it creates a circular economy. It keeps all the jobs and the money flowing inside town borders, supporting our other local businesses. If that business hires 50 people, well, there's going to be a secondary support business that will follow. If it's the right business, something that will support the main industry. And then once it have 2 or 3 of those that hire another 20 to 30 each, then you'll have even more support industries come in. Restaurants or another taxi company, for example, or something simple that just makes it more convenient to be there. It's not about making a choice, it's about making the right choice.
Thank you, Ken. And Rob.
Sadly, the past 2.5 years with COVID has strained many, many employers, and they're finding it very hard to fill the existing opportunities that they have. So there are jobs out there. For the town itself, what are we doing to attract? Obviously, as mentioned, Innisfil Heights servicing will bring larger employers to Innisfil. Our economic development team has worked with Toronto University, the DMZ incubator, bringing entrepreneurs together, providing them with the funding, and giving the opportunities to provide new employment opportunities. I think we're working on them. It's a matter of whether the residents, the jobs that the residents are looking for are the ones that are being created. We can't determine every employer that comes in here, but we can definitely try to attract them. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. That concludes our question and answer period. Please, before I do my wrap, take a few minutes to say thank you to our 4 candidates. This was not an easy time. What's ahead is even tougher. Please show your appreciation. If you'll give me a minute, I just want to do my thank yous and my wrap, all right? Because I'd like to say thank you to everybody here. I'm going to start with a woman who is not here today, Catherine Schutzen, the Manager of Engagement and Community Development here at the Innisfil ideaLAB and Library, for her tireless effort to bring together this team, even in the midst of her own illness that prevented her from being here today. Thank you, Catherine. Wendy Ricciardi, shout out to Wendy, Community Relations and Partnerships Library back here, did a tremendous amount of work. Our IDA volunteers, Rotary Club of Innisfil volunteers, with special thanks to Barb Bagley. Barb's around here somewhere. Special thanks to retired primary school teacher Ross Piddock for keeping us all on time and using the big stop sign only a couple of times. He only got a chance to use that a couple of times. I'm sending it home with him. A shout out to Brandy Hill for reprising her role 4 years later. She did this in 2018 and did it again. Thanks also to Will Steimel, I'm not sure where you are, Will, for corralling these candidates and getting them here on time. And to the library staff and volunteers who spent countless hours under Aaron's direction. Thank you so much for allowing us to have this space and this time to bring the democratic process to the town of Innisfil. The Rogers staff and volunteers, Madison and Ron, and all the volunteers that were here today, thank you very much. An event of this size and complexity doesn't happen overnight. There have been hundreds of hours put into this. If you are interested in participating, I heard a few folks who might be interested in future debates. This takes hundreds of hours and a lot of people, but it is a necessary part of our democratic process and a necessary part of creating space that is safe for us to have these conversations. So thank you again to the Innisfil ideaLAB and Library. Most especially, and I'm almost on time, I want to thank each of you. I want to thank our audience for your presence, your questions, and your commitment to this time. It doesn't happen overnight. And again, I have one final question for each of you. In a municipal election, what is the most important thing you can do? Thank you. Thank you all.
call the Rogers TV viewer response line, email us, or connect with us on social media. This is Rogers TV, Barrie.